Who was the loneliest person in recorded history and why? Everybody remembers the first two men to walk on the moon, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. Though, there was also a third man aboard Apollo 11. Can you remember his name? Considering how overlooked he is, the chances are slim. His name was Michael Collins. Collins was an essential part of the Apollo 11 mission. While Neil and Buzz were bumming it out on the moon's surface, Collins was in charge of the command module that would allow the team to return to Earth. This was no easy task, either. Collins was in orbit around the moon for roughly a 22-hour time span. Yet, this wasn't the worst of it. As Collins orbited around the far side of the moon, there was a 47-minute period where the moon completely blocked Earth. During those 47 minutes, all of Collins' communications were rendered inoperable. He was completely and utterly alone. At the time NASA declared, "Not since Adam has man known such solitude." Awe-inspiring as NASA's quote may have been, only Collins' own words truly captured the gravity of his isolation. This venture has been structured for 3 men, and I consider my third to be as necessary as either of the other 2. I don't mean to deny a feeling of solitude. It is there, reinforced by the fact that radio contact with the Earth abruptly cuts off at the instant I disappear behind the moon. I am alone now, truly alone, and absolutely isolated from any known life. I am it. If a count were taken, the score would be 3 billion plus 2 over on the other side of the moon. And 1 plus God knows what on this side. Statement from Apollo 11 astronaut Michael Collins. The first 2 men to land in the Sea of Tranquility may have accomplished one of humanity's greatest achievements. Nevertheless, Michael Collins achieved a level of tranquility beyond what any human has, or perhaps ever will, know. Michael Collins might not be the first astronaut people think of when they hear the words, Apollo 11. Though, I'll always have a unique reverence for the role he played in that mission. Former U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy says the most common pathology he saw during his years of service was not heart disease or diabetes, it was loneliness. Chronic loneliness, some say, is like smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It kills more people than obesity. Because loneliness is now considered a public health issue, and even an epidemic, people are exploring its causes and trying to find solutions. While writing a book on the history of how poets wrote about loneliness in the Romantic period, I discovered that loneliness is a relatively new concept and once had an easy cure. However, as the concept's meaning has transformed, finding solutions has become harder. Returning to the origins of the word, and understanding how its meaning has changed through time, gives us a new way to think about modern loneliness, and the ways in which we might address it. The dangers of venturing into lonelinesses. Although loneliness may seem like a timeless, universal experience, it seems to have originated in the late 16th century, when it signaled the danger created by being too far from other people. In early modern Britain, to stray too far from society was to surrender the protections it provided. Distant forests and mountains inspired fear, and a lonely space was a place in which you might meet someone who could do you harm, with no one else around to help. In order to frighten their congregations out of sin, sermon writers asked people to imagine themselves in lonelinesses, places like hell, the grave or the desert. Yet well into the 17th century, the words loneliness and lonely rarely appeared in writing. In 1674, the naturalist John Ray compiled a glossary of infrequently used words. He included loneliness in his list, defining it as a term used to describe places and people far from neighbors. John Milton's 1667 epic poem, Paradise Lost, features one of the first lonely characters in all of British literature, Satan. On his journey to the Garden of Eden to tempt Eve, Satan treads lonely steps out of hell. But Milton isn't writing about Satan's feelings, instead, he's emphasizing that he's crossing into the ultimate wilderness, a space between hell and Eden where no angel has previously ventured. Satan describes his loneliness in terms of vulnerability. From them I go, this uncouth errant soul, and one for all, myself expose, with lonely steps to tread, unfounded deep. The dilemma of modern loneliness. Even if we now enjoy the wilderness as a place of adventure and pleasure, the fear of loneliness persists. The problem has simply moved into our cities. Many are trying to solve it by bringing people physically closer to their neighbors. Studies point to a spike in the number of people who live alone and the breakdown of family and community structures. British Prime Minister Theresa May has set her sights on combating loneliness and appointed a Minister of Loneliness to do just that in January. There is even a philanthropy called the Campaign to End Loneliness. But the drive to cure loneliness oversimplifies its modern meaning. In the 17th century, when loneliness was usually relegated to the space outside the city, solving it was easy. It merely required a return to society. However, loneliness has since moved inward, and has become much harder to cure. Because it's taken up residence inside minds, even the minds of people living in bustling cities, it can't always be solved by company. Modern loneliness isn't just about being physically removed from other people. Instead, it's an emotional state of feeling apart from others, without necessarily being so. Someone surrounded by people, or even accompanied by friends or a lover, can complain of feelings of loneliness. The wilderness is now inside of us.